It was late when Caleb's truck broke down. The engine sputtered and died as he drove through the desert in northern Arizona, miles away from the nearest town. He cursed under his breath, the night air growing colder as he stepped out and popped the hood. The empty road stretched in both directions, the only company being the occasional hoot of an owl or the distant howl of coyotes. He tried to start the truck again, but the engine only groaned. With a heavy sigh, he grabbed his flashlight and began walking toward the small cabin he'd passed an hour ago. It had seemed abandoned, but it was the only place nearby that looked like it could offer shelter. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of sage and dust. Caleb could feel a strange heaviness in the air as he reached the cabin's door, which creaked on its hinges when he pushed it open. The inside was dark and musty, the floorboards groaning beneath his feet. The place looked like it hadn't been lived in for years, except for the strange markings on the walls. They were crude symbols, etched into the wood, circles and lines that almost seemed to move when Caleb wasn't looking directly at them. He shook off the chill creeping up his spine and stepped further inside. The door slammed shut behind him. "Guess it's just me and the ghosts tonight," Caleb muttered, his voice breaking the eerie silence. He fumbled for his phone, but there was no signal. Of course. He checked his watch, 12:15 a.m. As he sat down on an old couch, the wind outside howled, rattling the windows. Then, he heard it, a scratching sound coming from the direction of the back door. At first, he thought it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or something, but the noise didn't stop. It got louder, more deliberate. And then, there was a low growl. Caleb froze. The growl wasn't from any animal he'd heard before. It was wrong. The scratching continued, followed by a soft whispering. "Let me in." It was a voice, but not one that sounded human. The whisper was gravelly, raspy, like it came from deep within the earth. He stood up, heart hammering, his breath shallow. He didn't move toward the door, but his feet felt like they were glued to the floor. The voice grew louder. "Let me in." Caleb's hand reached for the flashlight again, his palms sweaty. He was about to turn it on when the door burst open with such force that it slammed against the wall, shaking the entire cabin. Standing in the doorway was a figure. At first glance, it seemed human, tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in rags that hung loosely around its form. Its face was hidden in shadow, but Caleb could feel its eyes on him, cold, black, empty eyes that seemed to pierce into his very soul. And then, it stepped forward. The door slammed shut again, and Caleb felt his breath catch. His eyes widened in horror as the figure's head snapped to the side, revealing something not quite human. Its face was a grotesque parody of a man's. Its skin was stretched tight, torn in places as if it had been sloughed off and poorly reattached. Its mouth was too wide, too thin, and when it spoke, the voice was a disturbing mix of guttural growls and human whispers. "You should not have come here." Caleb backed away, heart racing, but the creature didn't move toward him at first. It tilted its head, studying him with those cold, black eyes. The thing was wearing the skin of a man. But it wasn't human anymore. A sudden flash of memory hit Caleb like a hammer, his grandmother's warning, a story told in hushed tones during childhood.